Take care. Hopefully I'll see you again. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today I got to interview somebody in social work. I first met her when I was homeless and staying at the shelter. I've been wanting to interview somebody from that perspective for a while now, and she had some really interesting things to say. So we met at the shelter, and how long did you work there for?
Oh, only a year.
In general, how do you feel about that experience?
I feel it was positive for like my professional growth. You know, like that was one of the first real jobs I got out of university, was working with the homeless population, on men specifically. But unfortunately, it was a field I had to get out of. There's tons of other people who worked at the shelter who probably could speak to it more than I can.
What were some of the things that were consistent issues that you saw at the shelter?
You know, drug abuse is rampant. That's for numerous reasons. Mental health is huge. There's a lot of just complacency on attitudes, both of the client and on the staff. You know, you get caught in the this is never going to change rut. I know when I felt I was working there, I felt like I was working at a dam site and there's a leak in the dam. And all you have to fix the dam is a pack of chewing gum. Like, you know, like there is so many issues running rampant in the shelter that need to be addressed. And men specifically are very underfunded. You know, I work in the women's sector now, and it's night and day in comparison to funding. You know, where I'm at, the space I'm at now, there's day programs, there's things to keep you busy. You know, if you need addiction supports, it's, you know, for the most part, it's on site. You know, men don't have those options, and I think that keeps a lot of them stuck.
About the shelter in particular, what was something that you either think should be changed or that you wanted to change while you were there that you would think would help improve the situation?
Obviously, I think, you know, the mental health needs to be addressed. You know, I can give a man a bed, but if that man is in a schizophrenic psychosis, I cannot help him. I do not have the resources. I don't have the medication. I don't have the colleagues with the expertise. So what he's going to do is he's going to sit there for 3 to 6 months, and then he's going to move to another shelter, and he's never going to get that proper care. Same with addiction. You know, I can give a man in withdrawal, or a man, you know, who I've had a colleague just Narcan a bed, but he's not going to get treatment for his addiction at the shelter. That's not going to happen. You know, and even men who come back from detox, they're in the shelter and they relapse the same night because there's so much temptation and staff cannot control that. So I think if there was something I would suggest, it would be, you know, more funding so men can have accesses to those, you know, mental health supports, those professionals that they need when they go to the shelter, because there's nothing.
What would you say to somebody who responded to that by saying giving more funding would be a drain on taxpayers and that these people should be responsible for themselves? What would your response be to something like that?
The drain on the taxpayer comes from the shelter system. Like, I remember when I was working there, I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but they were saying it cost about $1,000 to keep a man in the shelter for a year. Not a year, sorry, a month. So it costs equally what it takes to keep them in prison, and that's a drain on taxpayer dollars. You know, it's a drain to have people who keep repeatedly getting arrested and in trouble with the law and never getting their issues dealt with. That's a drain on taxpayer dollars. They don't want to see the tent cities, but they don't have a solution either. So that's a drain on the taxpayer. The longer you don't let someone get help and you let them live in the system, the more they're draining your taxes. You know, I could send a man to rehab and he can have himself clean around in 6 months, or he can stay in the shelter system for 6 years.
What was most frustrating to you working there?
You know, like there'd be situations where, you know, a man is banned from every shelter but yours, but he just hit somebody else in the face, and now you have to ban him too, and now he's banned from everywhere and he has nowhere to go, and you're the person who had to do that.
It's a difficult position to be put in.
Yeah, because now he doesn't have a bed tonight. I get to go home and I get to go to sleep, and I know that he's out there.
Yeah.
I think that there's a different approach between like the way that men are treated and the way that women are treated in the homeless sector. Like, I know it's like with the women I've worked with in the homeless sector, it's a very nurturing, a very empowering, a very like, let's lift you up environment. The men's shelter, you walk in there, there's no goodbyes. There's no like, hey, let's work together, like let's honor you and work with you. It's very much like, oh, you're back. And there's...
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because of the volume of men that are homeless, or?
There's a perspective that when women end up in very difficult situations like drug abuse, homelessness, It's not necessarily viewed under the same lens as that's her fault. Where I think with men, you look at a man and you think, oh, well, he's a junkie, that's his fault. Whereas you think with a woman, oh, maybe it was a boyfriend, or it was a bad relationship, or her kids were taken away, she had no other options. We make more leniences for women than we do for those men. I think that it's just a societal difference.
Were there ever times when you felt threatened at the shelter?
Yes, someone threatened me in the food court at Jackson Square on my way to work with a knife if I didn't let him eat that day. I had a guy throw a walkie-talkie at my face. I was spit on. Yeah, there's everyone who's worked the shelter has their war stories with that sort of thing. The shelter system is kind of scary because the only thing that's really keeping stuff together from popping off is the honor system that it won't happen. And all it takes is one guy to be in the wrong place at the wrong time for stuff to pop off.
I found more than anything, it was the other residents who kept things from popping off.
It was mostly just, you're responsible for your own self, really. No one's really going to keep you safe there.
Do you think the public has a good sort of grasp of what's going on?
Oh, no. I think that's why Tent City is such a big deal right now, because people are actually seeing what's going on. I remember when I worked at the shelter, I would get calls from multiple Karens a day complaining about the state of our outside, saying, there's garbage and there's people everywhere. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, ma'am. It's in your own backyard. You need to wake up and look. I don't think people know. I don't think people realize just how bad the drug situation is here either.
Yeah.
It's pretty bleak.
So what are some things that you wish people did know or that you would tell people if you could?
I think people need to be a little more compassionate. I don't think people really care until it happens to them personally. I don't think until it hits home, they really care. Mm-hmm. And it can happen to anybody. I've seen men with, university degrees, more education than me, come into the shelter. It's not, a lot of people are one paycheck away from homelessness and they don't realize it.
If you were running things and wanted to make some immediate changes, what were some things you would first change?
Oh, universal income. I think that's needed, especially in the GTA. There were several men at the shelter who worked 2 part-time jobs, who worked full-time, who worked those, go get a job, remedial jobs they tell you to do when you feel like you have no skills. They worked the grocery stores, they were working at Tim's, the Walmarts, and they couldn't afford to come up with first and last month's rent, especially if they were paying child support or, have other expenses that people don't consider that men might have. So I think universal income would be one. I think that, addiction needs to be less of a shameful situation. I think the stigma attached to addiction, that needs to change so people feel okay to get help. I think deinstitutionalizing the mentally ill was a massive mistake. I think that system probably should have been rebranded, if you will, reestablished rather than completely taken out, because all I see all day were schizophrenic men, mainly. I would say 70% of our clientele were schizophrenic men who just needed that around-the-clock care, which they would have had in the 60s, but they can't have anymore. If you don't have families and friends to take care of you, it's the shelter system.
Probably what I get asked most is, well, what can I do? What can I do to help? What do you think the average person can do just in general to help the situation?
I think just having a larger perspective. Not everybody exists in a linear bubble that you think they do. Everyone has different lives, different experiences. Just because you think that you could pull yourself up by the bootstraps in a certain situation doesn't mean that somebody who's lived complex traumas or has complex mental health can. I heard a lot of the whole, I did it, why can't they kind of mentality, but everyone's reality is different than yours. So I think the average person should just be mindful. Maybe just think a little bit about other people before you react so suddenly.
I want to give a big thank you to Courtney for reaching out and for doing this interview with me. Thanks for watching. It really means a lot to me, and I'll see you in the next one.